Welcome back to the Scottish Marketing Summit podcast. Today I'm joined by Ross Penman from Converted. Ross is a sales consultant and trainer and is an absolute expert when it comes to all things sales inside your business. He's also going to be a keynote speaker at this year's Scottish Marketing Summit. Welcome, Ross, to the podcast, the Scottish Marketing Summit podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we're really excited to announce you as a keynote speaker at this year's Scottish Marketing Summit.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to obviously chatting today and of course, hopefully wowing the audience with what I'm going to share in my keynote speech at the summit itself.
Yeah, I've got no doubt about that. I don't think it's a hopefully. I think it's a case of when that happens, people will be absolutely wowed. So for anybody that is listening or watching us right now and they're like, who is Ross Penman? What does he do? And how's he going to help me with either my business or my marketing career? Give us a download. Give us the background as to you, what it is you're doing in the day-to-day and how you can help people.
Okay, so I'm Ross. I am, by definition, a sales consultant and trainer. And essentially my role is helping businesses, normally founder-led or ambitious growing businesses in the sort of SME range, basically convert more deals, create more opportunities and drive more revenue. I kind of look at two parts of the business. The first part from a consultative perspective is more about processes and systems, making sure they're ticking all the boxes there. Because what I tend to find is you rise to the level of the people in the business, but you fall to the systems and processes that you have in place, right? So that's normally the first area that I look at. The second area that is then the people themselves. So the skill of the salespeople or the founder or the people actually interacting with the customers or the prospects to up their skill level, make sure they're having better conversations to ensure that they can get better outcomes. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what I do.
And how did you get to the point of doing this? Has sales always been the thing for you, or is it something that over time you got curious about and evolved into? What's the story there?
Yeah, it's definitely an evolution. The actual title of the talk that I'm going to be doing, can I swear on this?
Yeah.
The title of the talk that I'm going to be doing at the Scottish Marketing Summit is Ross, you can't sell fucking anything. So that was the last thing that my sales director basically said to me at the age of 21 when he let me go or fired me from my sales role. So ironically, it's kind of came full 360. So yeah, this has definitely been an evolution. After sort of that part of my career, I went into the world of entrepreneurship. I followed my passion for fitness, for sport, in particular martial arts, and went and built a business, which I then successfully exited just earlier this year. And started a few other businesses in other sectors and industries around that as well. Some had some success, some definitely not. It's definitely a mixed bag, which is why I've got, I suppose, a broad spectrum of what works and what doesn't when it comes to growing and scaling a business. So yeah, I went on that entrepreneurial journey, and for the whole time that I was doing it, for well over a decade, I was not seeing myself as a salesperson. I had that chip on my shoulder that sales was sleazy, sales was pushy, sales was something that you did just because you were trying to get a quick buck or whatever. You didn't really care about people. And I got that really wrong. I know that now, and I can say that sitting in the position I'm in just now. But it wasn't until just a few years ago that perspective really shifted. And that was first and foremost the most important perspective I had to shift, because in order to be able to actually, I see sales now as something you do for people, not something you do to people, right? Yeah. And for that perspective to shift, I had to go on a bit of a journey myself, which was really sort of going back and looking at, well, why did it not work when I was 21 years old? Why did I get sacked from that role? And of course, there was a training and a process and a systems issue, which I can pass the blame on to my previous boss or previous employer or whatnot. But that doesn't lie entirely with them. There's also the responsibility on me as the individual, as the person who sees himself now as a high performer in business and in life, to actually go and learn and develop the skills of sales, if you want to call it that, which to me is just communication fundamentally. And yeah, I invested heavily in my own personal development in terms of money, in terms of time, in terms of energy to learn and upskill myself in those areas that I definitely was lacking because of that sort of chip on my shoulder, because I'd always been quite good naturally at most things that I'd done. And that was the first time I'd really had a sort of, I suppose, a knockback, if you want to call it that, where I couldn't do something right the first time. So that sent me on this journey of almost trying to prove my previous sales director wrong. And yeah, it's led me to this point now where I've got a fully different perspective on it, and I'm now helping other people who maybe feel like I did in that scenario as business owners or as salespeople, that they don't want to be that sleazy, manipulative stereotype that comes up. They want to be someone that can actually serve and not just sell.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sales is one of those areas that when you go into business, unless you go into business to be a salesperson, it's something that you just have to do at some point, but it's not really something that you forecast you're going to have to do. Much like marketing, you know, people say, well, here's the service that I want to offer. I'm just going to offer that service. And then they realize, well, actually, in order for people to know that you exist, you have to implement some marketing. And in order to get them to buy the service, you have to be running some sales activity. On that, on the marketing and the sales side of things, they're very closely linked in my eyes. And I think you agree as well.
Agree, yep.
From your experiences, so you spoke there about having businesses that have worked and businesses that haven't worked. Can you very clearly, now in hindsight, because we know how good hindsight is, see why some of those businesses worked and didn't work? And can you attribute that back to the sales and marketing activity that was done there?
Yeah, 100%. So the business that I built and successfully exited, which was actually my first business, which is quite ironic because normally the first one's the one that fails, but that was the one that was my baby. That was the one that ended up being, I suppose, one of the bigger successes.
Okay.
And it was a gym. So what I learned was that in order to have a successful gym in particular, you're not running a gym, you're running a marketing and sales business. We managed to get the business to the point where the annual churn rate was 31%, which, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty good in that industry, in that space, which meant that every year we had over 300 clients. So we had almost 90 members every year disappearing, and we had to then bring more than 90 in order for the business to continually grow. So one of the key things that I learned was that, yes, marketing and sales, it doesn't really come natural to most people, but it is the lifeblood of every business. Sales, in my opinion, is the only part or area of a business that makes a business money, technically, in terms of black and white speaking, right? Everything else is an investment or it's a cost to the business. So nobody gets paid in the business until something is sold, right? We don't have an economy until something is sold. The problem with sales and sales on its own, though, is without marketing, nobody knows you exist, right? So there's that saying, know, like, and trust, right? I always say marketing is the know section, okay? And then the trust, which I think is more important than the like part, but we can touch upon that maybe later, is the next most important factor, which is sales. And then the likability is like customer service and retention. So from looking at it from that point of view, that's what definitely allowed me to start viewing the business from not just a subjective point of view, but an objective point of view. Like, what do I have to do? If I spend X amount on marketing in terms of money, what do I get back for that? What's the ROI? If I spend X amount of time on investing in, I don't know, doing more sales calls, what is the ROI back on that? If I offer free trials, what is the, like, constantly just testing things to see what does work and what doesn't. Any other business that I had that wasn't a success was because we probably never got to the sales and marketing problems quick enough.
Okay.
We were probably focusing more on making the back end delivery perfect.
Okay.
I am a bit of a perfectionist, self-proclaimed. I think many business owners are. We are control freaks naturally, right? So I think that I was probably more interested in the bits that I was passionate about. And when I say SME, I don't just mean small, medium enterprises. I actually mean subject matter experts, right? That tends to be, especially the smaller businesses that I support, that's the people that really struggle with marketing and sales in particular, because they're good at the thing, right? I was good at personal training. I was good at teaching martial arts. I was good at said topic, but I had to learn all the other skills of building and running a business, which is marketing, sales, finance, operations, HR. And these are things that didn't come naturally to me. So if you are going to try and build something, I want you to think about not just being a subject matter expert and being the best at what you do. That is important, but it will only take you so far from a commercial perspective. You actually have to learn how to build a business, and you have to be able to wear those different hats in the beginning, or employ people that can do it for you, whether that's employees or subcontractors.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know, I was going to come to that in a wee bit, but let's come to it just now, the terms of learning to do it yourself and wearing those hats, and when is the time to start delegating that out. Now, I think for every section of your business, you touched on like HR, finances, sales and marketing, I think each of those areas you could spend a long time trying to find the perfect time to then go and delegate out or hire in. From a sales perspective, speak to it on both sides. So if somebody is solopreneur, it's just them in the business, there isn't necessarily a budget there for getting sales help or getting a rep in to help them or whatever that looks like, what do they need to be doing in terms of percentage of their time allocated to sales, upskill, maybe financial investment? And then speak to the other half, which is people that are getting ready to hand that off to somebody. What should they have in place and what are the kind of indicators you're looking for on both sides of that coin?
Okay, so good question. So two-part answer then. First part, if you're the solopreneur or you're just a startup and you're kind of wearing all those hats, everything from sales and marketing, delivery to cleaning and stock check, right?
Yeah.
depending on what you do. There's probably, I mean, it's the old 80-20 rule, right?
Okay.
I think you should have 80% of your time should be focused on delivery and the operational side of the business, and 20% of your time you should deliberately allocate to marketing and sales, to growing your business. Yeah. It comes back to that working on your business versus working in your business. And it's easy with hindsight, as you said, it's a bit of a superpower when it comes to business and sort of outlasting everybody else or outlasting some of the problems that you experience. But it's definitely, there isn't a truer sort of formula to it than making sure that you do something every single week that allows you to move that needle of progress forward. So what would that look like in real time? I always say to people, if sales and marketing doesn't come naturally to you, that's fine, but you have to accept that it is part of your business and it's your responsibility. You should be the biggest ambassador and salesperson for what you do. So it's a bit like any task, right? Let's use going to the gym. If you don't like keeping fit, when's the best time to go to the gym? In the morning or at the end of the day when you're tired? Probably do the hard thing in the morning, right? Get it out of the way. So if it's marketing and sales, if you don't like really doing that part of your business, then just set aside the first half hour or hour of each of your day. And then I would set aside another half an hour at the end of the day as well. The first hour being you're going to do your outreach, you're going to do the harder tasks because get them out of the way first thing in the morning. And then in the evening, by the time you go through the rest of your day, you've probably got some replies or responses that you need to go back to, and you don't really want to leave that over sort of 24, 48 hours. Speed to lead's important, especially in the world that we live in, because with your phones, you can literally order anything within, like Amazon these days, you can order stuff and get it in the same day sometimes, right? So the customers are trained to be more impatient than ever before. So it's not about like trying to be a full-time salesperson because you've got other hats to wear, like we mentioned, but it is about being very deliberate or intentional with making sure you put some time in place as sort of non-negotiables, like you would do if like you had toothache to go to the dentist, right? If your tooth was sore and you have a dentist appointment and they can only do Friday morning at 9 o'clock, then you will move your week around to go to the dentist appointment on Friday at 9. So if you have a toothache in your business, to use a sort of metaphor, i.e. you've got a pain point where you're not getting enough traction or customers coming in, you need to make that a priority. Whether you like going to the dentist or not is irrelevant. You will go because you understand it's going to benefit you longer term, right? It's the same with your marketing and sales. When it comes to then delegating that over, to answer the second half of your question, is I always say to people, you almost need to go to 120% before you know, right, I should be now moving this back a little bit. So you almost need to go past what is the sort of point of capacity if you're like a solopreneur, if you like. And only then it's one of those sort of unteachable lessons you learn that you probably need to go, I can't keep this up because it's not sustainable long term. And I've learned that lesson the hard way. And I know we were chatting before we came online about like, do you take time off at weekends? And you're like, it depends. Like, so that probably signals that if it gets to the point where it's like, not just it depends, it's like no, because you're doing all the stuff that is all consuming, then it's probably a signal, and you need to be able to be self-aware enough to pick up on those signals as to what is helping and what is not. Now, that might not be delegating marketing and sales. You might actually find that once you get into the nitty-gritty of it, you quite like that part. It might be delegating something simple like administration tasks. Yeah, it might be something basic like that, or a bit of finance. So it's not about delegating just the things that you don't like necessarily. It's also about delegating the things that give you the biggest ROI back in terms of your time and energy and capacity. Focus on the main tasks. So that's not a perfect answer, but it is a case of like everyone's going to be slightly different. But if you're starting to see the signals to the point where things are breaking, it's probably a good cue that you should be at least outsourcing stuff, and you should do that gradually. Start looking by outsourcing it to contractors or people that can help on a couple of hours a week basis. Don't just try and take an employee on full time, because nowadays there's so many fractional people that can help you, or agencies that can help do stuff, that they are just way better at it than you are. So they'll be way more efficient, way quicker. And it's coming back to that balance. If you can kind of get someone that, I suppose it's £100 an hour rule, right? If you can pay someone less than £100 per hour, because whatever you do in terms of income generating tasks or service or delivery is worth more than that, then you should probably look at delegating that out, because it's actually costing you more money for you to keep doing it yourself.
Yeah, it's the time, isn't it? Like, it comes back to that old debate of like, is it costing you time? Is it costing you money? And unfortunately, you get to a point where it costs you both, where you're doing nothing productive with your time compared to someone else, and it's costing you money at the same time. And again, like we said at the beginning there, that's true to everything inside your business. But for me, sales is one of the most sales is one of the most important parts. But for me, it's also one of the areas that should be prioritized in terms of delegation. Like, I think a lot of people just assume they have to always do the sales, especially if they're a personal brand. And I know that you work with a lot of people who are
Yep.
personal brands, and that is the business. It's
Mhm.
them, it's their skill set. And we know that, especially the last 12 months, personal brand has been a major, major buzzword that we hear. And
Yep.
it's also something a lot of people are leaning into. And I don't see that disappearing anytime soon. If somebody is a personal brand
Mhm.
and therefore it is Ross Penman that they are selling,
Mhm.
how does somebody come in and support with sales? Because my perception of that would be, the worry would be that if somebody else is communicating with the potential client or somebody else is doing the outreach, well, that's not the brand that people are buying into. How do you get around that objection, and how do you approach it from a personal brand standpoint?
It's just what you said there. It's just framing it differently,
Okay.
right? So it's not about, first and foremost, don't hide away from the fact that you're not that person.
Okay.
So if you are like a DM setter, for example, right, and you're setting for someone who's maybe on Instagram or LinkedIn and you're doing the cold outreach on their behalf, yes, maybe you're using their account, but don't hide away from the fact that you're not them,
Yep.
right? I think that's really important because again, it comes back to what I said earlier on, right? People, first and foremost, don't just buy people they like,
Mhm.
they buy people they can trust.
Yep.
It's the same with like pricing. Like if people are asking you questions around pricing, don't wait until you get on a call to give them and I'm not saying you have to give them the full price because it's very difficult, especially if you're doing like a bespoke sort of tailored service
Yeah.
to give a
Yeah.
price, but give a ballpark, give an indicator. All right. Because again, what you're trying to do here is you're trying to disqualify people who are not going to be worth your time, but you're also trying to build trust with people who are. So that's probably the first thing I'd look at. The second thing is you can look at it in one of two ways. You can either look at it as, oh, it's a downgrade that I'm getting the B minus version of Susan because she's
Yeah.
not willing to come on the call with me, or actually, it actually is the A plus version of Susan because Susan's so busy focusing on delivering for her customers
Yeah.
that she is delegating some of this out to
Yeah.
make sure that you are actually the right person to come in.
Yeah.
So when it comes to framing it back, you can always reframe it and turn it round and get the customer and challenge their thinking because you should be doing that. Good sales is not about me telling you why you should work with Susan.
Yeah.
Good sales is about getting you to tell me why you should work with Susan. So it's just, there's a skill and a technique in being able to do that, both in emails, both in actual conversations over Zoom, in person, over the phone. And it's being able to be confident enough and have the conviction around your time and your offering and your branding to reframe it in a way that makes you seem more prestige, even if you're not right now, right? It's a good way to sort of reframe it. So it just comes down to how you position that rather than the black and white, oh, I'm just someone setting on behalf of ABC person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And just as you're speaking there, I'm actually thinking back to probably the biggest financial investment I made in the business, which was one of my mentors. And I was just thinking there about the process I went through to then working with him. And actually, I never spoke to him until I was in that world, until the commitment had been made, the invoice had been sent. I was now ready to start working with them. But up until that point, I didn't feel any disconnect of the sales process. And I knew I was being sold to. I had actively asked for more information and then I was sold to. But when I went on a call with somebody, it was a different person altogether. And they just introduced themselves as, hi, I think his name was Stephen. I'm Stephen and I deal with all the calls and I make sure that you're going to be a right fit and vice versa. And I feed it back. And actually, we had a really great conversation. Beyond that point, when it went into emails, it was the person's email address that I was using, but it was Stephen that was signing it off. And it was very clear throughout. And I didn't feel any kind of disconnect because his marketing was picking up, not the thing that was dropped there, because nothing was dropped, that was the process. But through his marketing and through the content that he was putting out, that kind of filled that gap for me. So while I'm in this sales process of, am I going to invest? Is this the right thing for me? His marketing is taking over in the background. Now, his marketing take it in its simplest form, social media, was going out to everyone that followed him. But I was still consuming that. The email list that was going out to the whole database, but I was still getting his content. So while the sales process was somebody else, I was still able to be immersed in that world and not feel that it had been completely handed off to somebody else and that I felt really disconnected.
Yeah.
And actually, I've never thought about it from that perspective until we were talking about it there. I'm trying to remember a process where it was somebody else that sold to me. And that was one of the best examples. And that was the biggest financial investment I've ever done, both in an upfront sense, but also in a longevity sense. But it's also the longest I've ever stayed in somebody's world because they were so busy. They had to get somebody else in, and he is his personal brand. He doesn't even have a name on the company. It's just his name.
Yeah.
And that was a really interesting way of thinking about it. That's only just come to me just now. But that was like 6 years ago, and it worked really well then.
Yeah, and it still works now. And that's a great example of what you're saying there. So the marketing has obviously hit off, and you've resonated with something that in particular individual said to you through his content, through his funnels. So you've came into the top of the funnel and you've went, right, okay, I'm in here. But once you got in the ecosystem, what they did and what good sales, because to me, sales starts when someone raises their hand and they're a qualified lead. All right. So once they are qualified, i.e., they've given you an email address over or a little bit of information and they've actually expressed an interest of finding out more information. That's where, for me, the sales process for most businesses start. Up until that point, I would class you as marketing, right? Yeah. So then your job in sales at that point is not to immediately to sell to someone. Your job is just to, I always say to people, you're trying to take them across a bridge that they're a wee bit scared to cross by themselves, right? And you don't say, just run and jump, it'll be fine, because that's too much for most people, right? Especially nowadays, people are used to going into funnels, right? We're used, especially for coaches and consultants and things, where over the kind of COVID-19 period, we were in lockdown, that industry just went boom, and it's still booming now, to be fair. But customers or prospects are wiser to what they know now if they're given an email that they're going to get into a funnel, right? So you have to make it feel like they want to continue to go to the next step, which is go on an email list and then book a call and then do a follow-up and then whatever in the next, jump on an online webinar or whatever it may be. Just constantly taking them, hand-holding them step by step through the process. And that doesn't really matter who that is doing that. What's more important there is what you said, that you feel like you're being nurtured and you're not feeling like you're being sold to. It has to feel helpful. Yeah. And that's the key thing, that obviously, regardless of whether it was ABC person or Stephen, you felt like you could relate to both their personal brand, but then you were being nurtured through it. And then eventually you got to them and it was almost like, oh, that was well worth it.
Seamless.
Yeah.
And you know, the funny thing is, again, I never saw Stephen again because he was there for the sales process. It's not like he was on the other side waiting to continue. I never saw Stephen again. But I have really fond memories of Stephen because it was a really nice interaction that we had because he was so good at what he did.
So good sales makes the customer feel like they've made the decision to buy and they've not been sold to, right? So Stephen, shout out to Stephen. He's done a good job there.
Done well. Right, you mentioned a word there that I have a couple of points that I want to discuss. Leads.
Yes.
Leads. Now, I am not scared to admit, in my first business, when I was literally like, I have this skill and I want to sell it. When I first started consuming online content, people were talking about leads and I had not a bloody Scooby what they were on about. I was like, I don't understand what you mean by a lead. I'd never worked in a sales role up until that point. So it was never a lingo or language that I was around. Anyway, over the last 10 years, leads is now in my dictionary every single day, my vocabulary every single day. Do people need more leads? Is that usually the problem inside a business? Or is there something else that they are not doing that would get them more customers? Because leads versus customers, I think people get the two, not confused, but the numbers and the balances at times feel wildly off when you have conversations with people.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, we need to maybe define what a lead is, right? Because I definitely think there's a difference between a lead and a prospect. So a lead is just someone who's raised their hand and said, hi, I'm interested potentially in whatever it is you have to offer, Mr. Business or Mrs. Business, right? Then your job to get them to become a prospect is to try and qualify them. Or I used the word earlier on, disqualify, because I think reframing it that way is more powerful. Because what happens, especially in the early days, especially if you're a solopreneur as well, running a small business, is as soon as anyone likes or engages with anything, you emotionally get hung up on business, money, opportunity, right? And that's not the reality. That person, you don't know if you can or can't help them, or if they are or aren't really interested, right? So your job then is to try and distill down, put a little bit of friction in their way, just a little bit, enough to get them to take another step, like I mentioned, across the first step onto the bridge, right?
And what would that look like? Give us examples of
It could just be a lead form, for example.
Sure.
It could
so
be
putting in their email.
Yeah, it could be putting in an email address. Yeah, it could be. I mean, every business in an ideal world, if you want to have someone who becomes a proper qualified lead, you would want an email address, you'd want their name, and you'd want probably a phone number. Like that is like, in my opinion, the three most basic pieces of information you should get. But even if it just starts with an email address, that's better than nothing, right? And then going from there, you take them through the next part of your process, which could be getting them on a webinar. It could be having a call with them. It could be that you phone them up in not a cold call now, but maybe like a warm-ish call, I would call it. Not a warm call, but a warm-ish call, because they've came to you. So it's not an inbound sales call. It's still an outbound sales call, but you've got their data because they've raised their hand, right? And then that to me is more like a qualification call. So then you would ask slightly deeper questions. You would go through what I would class as truth discovery in my sort of sales script. So this is you getting sort of logical certainty as to whether you can or can't help them. That's the first part. You also have to understand if what they're trying to achieve, and I call it the tangible outcome, if that's something that, again, they actually believe is their desired outcome, is something that you're like, okay, that is doable or not doable. Because often what a customer says they want and what they need is different, right? So you have to try and marry those two things up. First and foremost, what is it they want to achieve, and what is the desired outcome they want to get potentially from working with you? And can you actually deliver on that? If you can't qualify that or understand that quite early on in the process, you're probably going to take someone through the sales process who then, when they hit you with an objection, it's on you, in my opinion, because you haven't done your due diligence up front properly, right? And then the last question that you probably need to have, and these, I say question, like there's more questions to go through the qualification process in this, but on a very macro level would be, what's your past experience up to this point? Like, why have you not already achieved this outcome up to this point? That's a really key one, because that's going to get them to open up to you and create a bit of urgency as to why they haven't taken action. So you're going to get two things from that. You're going to plant the seed in their mind that, actually, well, why haven't I solved XYZ problem so far? That's a good question. And the second thing you're going to get from that is you're going to get a potential objection. You're going to be able to highlight one because it was too expensive, because I've never done this before. So these are going to be things that in your head as a salesperson, you should already be thinking, that might come back later on when it comes to the pitch. I'm going to expect a potential objection around that, so you can put a pin in that. So this is why being able to actually qualify people properly, or like I said, disqualify, is really crucial. Alrighty. Once they get through that part of the process, I would then say they're a prospect, because they've been through a little bit of friction. So now you're able to actually engage in proper sales conversation. Now, again, that can look different from everything. It could be everything from like a VSL right through to having a sit-down sales meeting, like and conversation that we're having just now. And maybe B2B, it could be extrapolated out over a really long period of time as well, because again, you might need to involve other people who are in the decision-making process, et cetera, et cetera. But that is my distinction between someone who's interested, someone who's a qualified or disqualified lead, and then someone who becomes a prospect. All righty. What was the second part of the question? Sorry on that one.
We were talking leads versus customers. And so again, really great definition, leads and prospecting. But also, like you touched on, if somebody's like double tapping your Instagram post and people go, yes, customers, cha-ching, like that's customers coming in the door. They're just waiting to send the message. So lead numbers versus customers, and how that can look different in all different businesses. But again, like you've just kind of spoken to there, having that qualification process then allows people to understand, or disqualification process allows people to understand, well, for every 100 leads that come in, how many customers am I going to get on the other side of that? So it's that entire process from a wee bit interested to being qualified.
Yeah, 100%. I think the actual question was like, do people have a lead problem or do they have a sales problem?
Yeah,
I think that was the original question now, tracking back. So thanks for clarifying that. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so what I tend to find is, obviously, most people think they just need more leads, but the reality is probably not, right? If you're not converting very well, it's probably that you have a conversion problem rather than a leads problem. And this is so true. It's just that people don't want to admit it, right? You probably haven't done enough. You probably gave up on the leads that did raise their hand too early in the process. And it's not your fault. Like, if you don't know what you don't know when it comes to a good sales process, then you don't know what you don't know, right? And this comes back to me earlier on when I was saying I was good at the thing as a subject matter expert. I wasn't good at the marketing and the sales and the operations and the HR, because I didn't know that. So how did I learn it? A bit like yourself, I had to invest in coaching. I had to invest in time and energy. I had to make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Like I said, that I was quite open. I've had businesses that completely failed and
Yeah.
cost me a lot of money and a lot
Yeah.
of pain. And I've had businesses that have done quite well.
Yeah.
So I've got that nice balanced perspective. And that's one of the things that I've learned is you have to really understand like each part of the process on how you take the customer through that sales journey. Because if you don't do it properly and you just give up on them too early, it's probably cost you money potentially in terms of marketing.
Yep.
And it's probably cost you time and emotional energy as well.
Yeah.
So what a lot of people can do, one of the first things I do when I go into any sort of business engagement is I go, right, let's look at all the leads over the last 6 to 12 months. Where are they on your database? The problem is if you don't have a database, that's a bigger issue, right? Which again is why I always start with process rather than sales skills, okay? Because people always like the fancy objection handling and reframing and shifting someone's perspective in that moment to get them to buy into a new belief system, to get them to come to clarity that you are the thing that they must invest in, right? And that is definitely cool to watch and it's a skill in itself. But the process part is more important. Like I genuinely believe in, from the people that I work with, like your average SME or business converts at about 20%, right? So for every 100 leads that come in, like you were mentioning there, you'd get potentially 20 customers out of it. But that doesn't mean that's good, right? That's just average. So it's
got to be above and below it,
100%. And there's some people that are way below it and there's some people that are above it. But I've seen on most businesses that I go into, normally within quite a quick turnaround period, so first couple of months, literally increase conversion rate by 10% just by improving a little bit of the process. There was one business that I went in and I listened to a couple of calls that they were doing that week. And the salesperson was going into a lot of detail and with discovery and talking about like the product itself and how it can help them save money and all that kind of stuff, and just didn't ask for the money at the end of the call. I listened to like 3 or 4 calls and I was like, why are you not asking for the money? Started asking for the money, sold 3 systems the next week. And did like 50 grand worth of revenue. Like literally because there was one small part of his process that he just didn't have down. Now, that seems so obvious sitting here having a conversation about it. But it's not obvious because, again, if you don't know what you don't know when it comes to what good looks like, right? So it's little things like that are really key to being able to identify. And that's obviously where sort of I come in and help people with that part of the process, do a bit of an audit and kind of go, right, okay, why are you not doing that? And then people almost, I don't want to say they feel silly, but they do feel a wee bit like, oh, that was kind of common sense. But again, common sense is only common sense when it's common knowledge, right? If it's not common knowledge, it's not common sense. So most people don't have a leads problem. 9 times out of 10, they have a conversion problem. Because what you don't want to do is if you are converting at 20%, you don't want to just increase your marketing budget because you might get more leads in, but you're still only converting at 20%. So yes, in theory, you're going to make more money because you'll get more customers, but your expenses have increased relatively to the customers you've gained. So your cost of goods sold or your cost of acquisition per customer has also gone up. So it means your profitability may actually not have increased as much as you want. So looking at once you're getting a few leads in, you should be looking at your legacy leads and how you can re-engage them and how you can then potentially, because there'll be money sitting in that sort of lead graveyard, right? There'll be money sitting there. And then you can take that money once you're at 25, 30, 40% conversion rate. And every pound you put into marketing, you're now getting way more back out than what you originally planned for, if that makes sense. So that's where marketing and sales sometimes gets a bit misconstrued. As people think, I'll just throw more spaghetti at the wall and hope it sticks in terms of marketing budget. And that's not really the actual problem. That's a bandage over a deeper issue.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest gripe in the marketing world is the people that only sell and can only talk about getting you more leads. Lead generation is a skill. Some people need that skill inside their business. But in my opinion, like you've just spoken to, that's not actually the problem that people face. I think your next 5 to 10 customers, arguably maybe even more, especially if you're working at volume, already know who you are and just need a reason to raise their hand. Maybe that is a phone call, a text message, a blooming Instagram message, whatever you want it to be. They just need a reason to say, yes, let's have a conversation. But the issue with a lot of the language that's pushed in the online space, just get more leads, is it doesn't address the problem, which is the process. And as you said, you could have a database of 10,000 people and have no customers on the back end of it. Getting the leads, I'm not going to say it's easy to get leads, but generally speaking, there's a couple of different ways to get leads for pretty much any business that exists. But getting good leads and then being able to turn the leads into prospects, that's the disconnection that a lot of people experience. And from my experience, that's where a lot of businesses then will say things like, marketing doesn't work for us. Because they got us all these leads, but nobody bought. So then they'll say things like, well, the leads were bad quality. Well, were they bad quality, or did you just not qualify them or disqualify them? Did you take them down the funnel, down the path to the point of purchase? Probably not. Did you think that the marketing company were just going to get you leads and tick, that's job done? Well, actually, there's so much more comes beyond it. And it is my biggest gripe. It's one of the, for me, it's a red flag, and it's something that disqualifies people. If they come into my world and they say, how many leads can you get me every month? Like, that's not the question you need to be asking here. It's how can you make me more sales, and how can we nurture the people that already exist to the point of purchase, repurchase, or upsell on the other side. So I'm with you 100% on that.
So interesting you said that, because I spoke to a few people in the marketing space, obviously, because it's marketing first and then sales, right? And the order of sort of the business buying order, a customer journey, right? So, and there's so many marketing agencies or people who work in marketing who say the exact same thing. They're like, it's nothing to do with marketing. We've done our bit. It's the business owner or the sales team are then dropping the ball. But people don't want to admit that, because again, especially when it comes to sales, people don't know what good looks like a lot of the time, right? And it's not hard to objectively quantify it, because you can, if you're tracking the right data that you need to be, and it's only a few key metrics like conversion rates, etc. Show up rates, pick up rates, response rates, follow up time. These type of things are really key to be tracking. Problem is, most people aren't tracking them. People are lazy with their sales process because they think that product or service will sell themselves. So they think that lead comes in, we have great product or service, customer will buy. It's a wee bit like I seen ScotRail years ago post snow on track, train no go. No snow on track, train go, right? So it's a wee bit like that. Like if you've got a bad sales process, customer no buy. Good sales process, customer buy. Right? So you're right. There's kind of a disconnect between the lead coming in and the fulfillment happening, and that part in the middle, that delta, if you want to call it that, is a term that I use in my world, is the sales process.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating, and I think I have a lot of conversations round about it. You probably do as well. And for me, it's awareness. It's educating people that sales and marketing exist together, but they're also very different, and they're there to do very different things as well. You know, marketing is the awareness piece. Sales is the literal sales piece. And I think that the meaning of the word sales does get lost in business. You know, sales activity is, oh, well, that's something that bigger companies do or other people do. It's not something that I need to do as a sole founder, but it absolutely is. And I think it's that awareness for people to understand not only what it does, but what it can do for them.
Yeah, for sure. And it's key. Like I said at the beginning, sales is the lifeblood of every business. It's the only area of the business that actually generates cash. Every other area, in theory, is an investment or an expense.
Absolutely.
So you need to pay attention to it.
Absolutely. And I know that a lot of people listening, and myself included up until not that long ago, you know, the idea of kind of tracking things is really, it's daunting. You know, if you look back at all the things that you've done, so say you've been in business for like 10 years and you're like, oh, I'm not tracking my pickup rate or my answer rate on the phones. You know, some people will say, oh, well, I've not done it for 10 years. What difference is it going to make now? Or they'll go, oh, I can't backdate the last 10 years, and it puts them off from starting now. Is your biggest piece of advice just start now?
Yeah, it's that whole idea of when's the best time to plant a tree. It was 1,000 years ago. The next best time is literally today. All right, like, if you can pull some data together and try and come up with some form of metrics, fantastic. That's a wee bit better of a starting point. But if you can't pull that together, then don't let that be the reason that you don't start now, right? So it might take you a month or two to actually pull some proper metrics together, because it's a bit like when I used to personal train people, right? I'd get my clients, and people didn't like this concept, but it's really important when it comes to data. I'd ask my clients to weigh themselves every single day. Now, people were uncomfortable with that because obviously your weight fluctuates quite significantly based on cortisol levels, so stress levels, based on how you slept, based on what you'd eaten, based on activity, blah, 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 blah. All that stuff played into a fluctuation of 0.5 kilo, 2 kilo, whatever on a daily basis, right? But that wasn't the reason I got them to do it. I had to get them to emotionally detach from what the data was saying on a micro level and start to look at the trend line over time. Because then when we could see the trend line, whether it was positive or negative, that's when we could start to make strategic decisions on what we adapt. And I used to say to people, I will not change your nutrition and your exercise at the same time, because I don't know what one is impacting positively or negatively. It's the same here. We don't know whether we change marketing or we don't know whether we change sales until we've got some data to actually give us an opportunity to analyze it and go, actually, you do have a leads problem. Okay, can we open up another area of the marketing mix? What are we not handling? Do we need to do more offline marketing? Do we need to do more online marketing? Do we need to go cross-platform? Do we need to create better lead magnets? How are we going to get more people to raise their hands? Or if we've got people raising hands and they're just dropping off when they hit the landing page, or they're dropping off after the first phone call, or they're not qualified, then that's a sales issue. Okay, so let's look at how do we qualify these people better, or how do we continue to take them through the next part of the funnel to keep that intrigue, as you said, it ongoing. That's the key part. And that's where we get into more psychology and human behavior of how we actually keep people warm and nurtured through the process. And sales as well, just to add that, it doesn't finish when the money's in the bank. Then you need to start going through the next part of the process, which is customer fulfillment and delivery, cross-sell, upsell, and asking for referrals. So sales literally starts from, like I said, when you get that first sort of qualified lead through the door, right until a customer exits or refers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the upsell, downsell, even reselling process, depending on what the service and business is, product is, I think that's an area that a lot of people neglect as well, because they also assume, well, if they've bought one service or one product, they will love it and they will know to come back and buy the next service that complements that. Or, you know, if it is product based, well, they'll know to come back and buy the product that complements this. People don't know until you tell them. And again, that takes you, you know, it's further down the overall process, but in some ways it also takes you back to that marketing process of, okay, well, now that they're in and they have spent some money, we now need to shift that awareness, not just to the brand, but now to other options for them, ways to enhance the experience that they've already had. Again, whether that's a service or a product. So it's almost like that cycle kind of starts to repeat, but you don't need to then start kind of qualifying and disqualifying people as much at that point, because you know, we all know the kind of saying that says, you know, if somebody spends money with you once, they're more likely to spend it with you twice than average Joe off the street that you need to go and find. It's cheaper to upsell than it is to acquire. But a lot of people are forgetting the fulfillment and the delivery side, and they're not marketing to their already paying customers or clients on the other side. Is that something you do inside your business, is helping with the upselling, the downselling, the reselling, and what does that look like?
100%. It's one of the things that, again, second to looking at the legacy leads, it's the next thing I go and look at. I'm like, okay, without spending any more money on marketing or any more time and energy into that, let's look at our existing customers. Either who can we upsell to, or who can we ask for a referral? Because, as you said, it's the cheapest and probably the warmest leads you will ever get, which to me, again, seems like common sense, but again, it's common sense because that's the world I'm in, right? It's not common sense until you actually have someone spell that out for you and show you how to do it. But it is, because then what you can do is you can maybe get a bit of cash in by phoning some legacy leads and getting them over the line. You can maybe get some extra cash in for deals that were in the graveyard, or customers that you thought, oh, they'll come to me when they're ready type thing, rather than you go to them. I don't mean this unkindly, but you're not the most important thing in your customer's world at every moment in time, right? We all have lives, we all have jobs, families, our fitness to look after, other things that are going on. So unless you're constantly staying sort of front of mind, you become out of mind, out of thought, right? So it's really important that as a business, you continue to show up in their life and continue to engage with them on a small level or on a large scale. It doesn't make a difference, but just constantly be doing that. Because then when it comes to the opportunity to cross-sell, upsell, downsell, ask for referral, it's a great way for you to get more cash in, which you can then do what? Reinvest back into your marketing, generate more leads, and the cycle continues, right? So it is something I help with on the internal side, because it's key. It's one of the easiest ways to generate more quick cash in your business, which then, if you do it correctly, you can reinvest, like I said, and actually start to grow and scale that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that, what do you think one of the easiest things, and I say easiest loosely because not many things are easy in business, but one of the, maybe let's just say quickest. If somebody said today, we want more sales inside the company, what would be the one area you would tell them to go and look at today, with one task to do that will probably give them the biggest bang for their buck?
It would be to speak to their existing customers and ask for referrals.
Yeah. And on the referral process, how do you go about that? Because I think people feel really awkward about referrals. They feel awkward saying to people, do you know somebody like you that would also like my thing?
Yeah. And it just comes down to having an open conversation, right? And the only way you can have an open conversation is if you've built that trust in the first place, right? So, I mean, you can be as bold as just openly say, hey, who else do you know that needs what I do? That is one way to do it. And to be honest with you, when you're in the beginning process, it's probably the best way to do it. Okay. But what you can do is you can incentivize people as well, right? So one of the things that we used to do, for example, in the martial arts gym was we would we would do referral cards and
Yeah.
would gamify the internal referral process, right? So it seems a wee bit cheap and nasty, but it worked really well. We would have a wheel where the kids could spin and win a number of different prizes. Top prize being like £100 cash, because I knew that I was willing to pay up to £100 to acquire a new client like that. For me, I'd worked out my CAC, I'd worked out the ROAS and all that stuff. And that for me was up to £150 was actually what we were happy to spend to get the lifetime value of a client back. So we put the top prize as £100. We had prizes from 20, that was £100 cash. Then we had £25 cash, £50 cash. We had a free uniform. We had lots of different incentives, a private lesson, stuff that they would actually want, right? Because this is where people go wrong. Oh, I'll give out a £10 Amazon voucher. Okay, but with all due respect, again, you're not the most important thing in their life at every moment in time. So how are you going to actually incentivize them? Although they rave about you already, probably to their friends, how are you going to go out their way to bring someone into your world and actually potentially become a customer? £10 Amazon voucher is probably not going to cut it, right? So you have to create enough of an incentive for them to go and do it. So we would give out cards and we would say that every time someone joined the club, you would get to spin the wheel.
Okay.
And the kids loved spinning the wheel. And the amount of kids that I've got photos of holding that £100 cash. I remember the first month we did it, I gave out £500 cash and my staff were like, Ross, you've just spent £500 on that wheel. And those kids are standing. I was like, that's brilliant. I was like, because I understand that for every £100 I spend, we make 1,200. Like I knew that. So then I could justify that in my ad spend, if that makes sense. So that would be, I mean, it's a very real example. It's a very basic example, but it's a good one to keep in mind. Like you've got to incentivize your best customers to be your best salespeople or talent scouts for your business.
Yeah, and it comes back to the old, like, what's in it for them? What's in it for me? You know, if you're asking me to do something for you, to help you, to further your business, there's got to be something in it for me. You will, of course, get customers who just want to rave about you because they love
fans,
you.
right?
Yeah, exactly. They are the OGs. They will run your business or they'll grow your business for you. But not everybody's like that because, as you say, whether people are buying into, like your example, a gym membership, or whether they're buying the shampoo that they'll use to wash their hair, it is only the tiniest fraction of their world because everyone's so complex and got so much going on. So it's finding a way that actually makes it worth it for them. But also I think a lot of that comes back to relationship building as well. And again, whether you're service or product based, it's making your customers feel something, that they feel emotionally invested to help you, to tell their friends. And I think some of that comes back to the nurture side and the marketing side as well. You know, if you can tell a really strong brand story and get people involved from day dot, then they're far more likely when the opportunity lands in their inbox or in a text message or whatever it is that asks them, do you know other people? They're far more likely to take that up as well. So that's another example to me of sales activity that is then fueled by the marketing as well. Because if you come out the blue with that, what's the point? You know, if people haven't been nurtured to that point of building that brand loyalty and that real emotional connection, then you could have the greatest message or process in the world, but it won't land with people. But if you prime people for that action to come at some point, then when you come in with that action, they're far more likely to take you up on it as well. And again, I think that's another example of where sales and marketing are totally feeding into each other, but it's also completely circular at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. They have to be working in collaboration the whole time. And often in businesses and especially in the sort of fractional world, it's almost like marketing versus sales. And I always say this to people. I always say people at the bottom compete, people at the top collaborate. So if you are going to have success in your business, whether it's a small business or a large scale business, you need all parts of your process to be in collaboration, not in competition. So that's really key.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's a great kind of nugget to leave that section of the podcast with, because I am going to turn it round and I'm going to ask you to give us a couple of maybe sneak peeks. You've already dropped the title of your talk at this year's summit, but what else can people expect when they come to the Scottish Marketing Summit and when they see you on stage and listen to what you have to say?
I want to take them on a bit of a journey around how, first and foremost, your belief system forms your thoughts, which then dictates your actions, which then creates your outcomes.
Okay.
And that's important for two reasons. One, because if you understand that about yourself first and foremost, then you can almost change your patterns of behavior and you can tackle it from the source of the problem, which then means that if you understand that about yourself, you can start to understand that about other people, which will allow you to have better sales conversations with people. And this is where I talk about sales as a skill. And the talk is going to have that as a kind of concurrent theme through it. Like I said, I thought I wasn't a salesperson. I thought sales was sleazy, manipulative. I thought it was something that you did to people, not for people, like I mentioned earlier on. And I was so wrong about that. So that's going to be, without giving too much away, that's going to be a key theme. It's about being able to understand that you are in control of the controllables and you should focus on doing that. And if you want to be successful in business in any area of your life, a lot of it is skill-based and awareness-based. And if you can, first and foremost, it's 3 A's, right? It's awareness of the thing that you need to be aware of, the problem, the passion, whatever it may be. It's then acceptance. You have to accept it. And whether you like the fact that it's true or not, like the fact that I had to accept that sales wasn't a bad thing. Okay. And then the last thing is action. All right. So without giving too much away,
I like that.
That's kind of what you're in for. It's going to be me telling the story of how I went from being someone who was anti-sales to now pro-sales in a sort of 13-year period.
Nice. And what a journey that'll be for everyone as well.
It's quite the journey for sure.
And just finally, what are you most looking forward to at the Scottish Marketing Summit? Apart from you standing on stage, because I know that will be the key thing for you as a keynote speaker. That's what you're working towards. But outside of that, what are you most looking forward to at the summit this year?
I'm looking forward to, of course, seeing other keynote speakers. I know I'm not going to give it away because I don't know how many have been revealed at this point in time. So I'm definitely, there's a few key people that I'm aware of that are coming that I think I can selfishly learn from. I'm also looking forward to connecting with a lot of people. I actually missed last year's summit and I'm really excited. As soon as I heard about this one, I got in touch with you, Susan, and I'm really excited to connect with people. I mean, there's going to be over 300 businesses there, and I know you've got that good 50-50 split between marketing and then everybody else. So it'll be really interesting to connect with other people and sort of get their perspective on how marketing and sales do or don't work together. I think me and you are very much on the same wavelength with that. But not to go and challenge people that are there, but to definitely, again, find more people to collaborate with and see their opinion on it and how I can maybe help, or vice versa, they can help me.
Yeah, and it comes back to that, the more conversations we have, the more awareness you can create around the things that people have in their mind, the preconceived notions, whether they're good or bad. The more conversations you can have around sales, the more you can help people. And that's what everything comes back to, is having that conversation. So I'm very excited to hear your keynote speech and also see how our audience interact with it as well, because I know that you're going to be not only giving us so much knowledge, but I know that you're going to interact in little ways with the audience as you're speaking and, of course, afterwards as well. So I'm very, very excited to see it this year.
Yeah, I am too. And the after party.
Yeah, the after party. I mean, I think most people are just coming for the after party at this point.
I think that'll be good. I'm looking forward to that too.
The after party is going to be great. And, do you know, there will be elements of it that are party, but the main purpose of that is for as you said, there's going to be over 300 people in that room. You're not going to get to speak to every person in that room. You know, in between all the talks, the exhibition area, the lunch, all that kind of stuff. It's physically impossible, but it gives people another space, a more relaxed space. People might want to have a drink at the same time, but it gives people that space to have more conversations and also continue conversations from during the day, because we all go to events where we meet somebody really interesting and we just wish we could keep speaking to them. So it gives them another reason as well. And we've got a few cool things planned for that too.
Yeah, no, I'm excited.
Amazing. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know that people are going to love this, and I know that people are going to really look forward to your keynote as well. And I can't wait for it. I think it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. And as always, like we do at the summit, we make sure that every keynote who is speaking, you are the only one that is speaking towards the sales side of things. And that means that when people want to learn about sales, you are going to be the go-to person for them at this year's summit.
No pressure.
Thank you so much, Ross.
No, it's been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to the summit. Thank you, Susan.